Hello, everyone. Welcome to the New Jersey International Film Festival filmmaker Q&A session that we're going to be doing with an amazing director from Germany. His name is Immanuel Esser, and we are going to be talking about his very, impressive feature. Is this your first feature, Immanuel?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and it's called Paradise. And we're going to be talking about that for the next half an hour or so. And before we do that, I just need to let you know how you can get more information about our festival. And you can go to our website, which is on the sign behind me, which says njfilmfest.com. And then you would click on where it says New Jersey Film Festival, New Jersey International Film Festival, Summer 2021 schedule. Click on that. Normally, everything would open up for you there, but because of COVID, and hopefully this is the last festival we'll have to do virtually, although I think in the future we will do a hybrid because doing virtual film festivals has opened up our audience to people around the world. So, but we're looking forward to doing our festival live again in the fall. We'll do the New Jersey Film Festival there. But the International Film Festival will be done virtually between June 4th and June 13th. We'll be screening 25 films that were selected from just about 550 entries. So we're showing you the best films that were selected by a jury that included academics, film students, previous winners, and journalists. So it's you're watching the creme de la creme, and Immanuel's film Paradise is one of them, one of 3 feature films that we'll be screening. So Immanuel, tell us, how did you get interested in making this film?
Well, feature films, they are long progress, right? So I spent, I don't know, 3.5 years making this film from first ideas to finally finishing it as a DCP, as the format that you now have.
Yeah.
When you finish your movie. And so there are several processes going side by side, I think. And for me, maybe style-wise, I love this idea of looking at movies as kind of thought experiments, where you look at the world and something is different to ours, but other things are the same, and you're kind of managing these expectations and this search for similarity and this search for difference. So that the basic how to approach a fictional world that was with me quite a long time before I made this movie. But then, well, there were several personal processes. For example, I accompanied my grandfather's death in the hospital, seeing all these very technical steps that nowadays a hospital consists of. It's basically machines telling you what to do, and of course we know how they do it, but still, that's what happens. And driving these feelings that I had then into kind of an extreme version, maybe, of a world that consists of such a manner of deciding about death and then going through the process of dying. That was maybe what gave the last push in this world, in this direction.
Yeah, we need to tell our audience the Paradise is basically a film that I consider it kind of existential, almost. I wanted to say sci-fi, but we don't really know when this film is taking place, whether it's in the future. I guess it's in the future. But it focuses on 3 workers who work for a company called Styx. So the reference to hell is to the other places there. And they're basically going from job to job, from place to place, terminating people in a very quote unquote clean way, and then they get them ready for processing. So I can see how you talk about the clinical nature of death in the modern age is something that you are elaborating in your film, or questioning, I would say, because the film itself is very austere and it's very meditational. And, I love the cinematography is just wonderful. These very restive shots of nature and the environment that you document is, you know, and yet at the same time, the long shot is the primary shot that we see in your film. I mean, there's a kind of detachment that we have between the subject matter and the people that are in the film. Was that something that was intentional?
Well, I think that's the mode that we look at fictional worlds.
Mm.
Sometimes we are made to forget that they are fictional.
Yeah,
The main principle of storytelling in the mainstream, of course, nowadays is that we forget that we are looking at a fictional world, and
yeah,
that we forget that we are being manipulated every step of the way to feel a certain way and accompany the people navigating this world. And I don't have anything against that, but
yeah,
there's also another mode that we could say is also very worthwhile, and that is to look at a fictional world, but having markers in this process all the time that tell you that you are looking at a fictional world that is being constructed along the way. And this, yeah, the distance that I chose, or we chose, my cinematographer and I, and the geometry and the elements like this, they help giving you, maybe hopefully, um, this this reflective distance that you can from
yeah,
time to time then divulge in, like sit there and look at a long shot that lasts a long duration, and you can think about where you're at, what it does to you, and maybe also about the world that you bring into the cinema with you.
yeah,
So it's more of a form of dialogue than, rather than captivating a person and then um, throwing them down a rabbit hole and then spitting them out again.
yeah, yeah.
It's more of a, yeah, a dialogue that I thought was very interesting, for especially for a topic like this, because I think in a topic like this, well, manipulation and emotion are problematic, or interesting factors, to say that neutral.
While I was watching your film, I jumped right away to films like Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger's A Matter of Life and Death, or Here Comes Mr. Jordan, even a movie like Logan's Run. I don't know if you're familiar with those
Oh, I
movies.
can see that.
I recommend you check them out because they all deal with, in Logan's Run, society, it's in the future. And at the age of 28, I believe, you're forced to kind of be killed. I
Mhm.
mean, you know, your time is up. There's not enough resources because they live in a bubble. And so at that time, they need to, you know, life is taken away from them. But this one fellow, Logan, who is quote unquote a policeman who tracks down, like a Blade Runner, though tracks down those people that have tried to escape their inevitable demise, that he becomes one of the runners. And
Mhm.
so I thought of your film because, in essence, the three um, workers who work for Styx, one of them finds out, or maybe multiple of them find out, that they are also going to be terminated. And so they are becoming runners in their own right. And I wondered if you had seen any of those films because, well, Logan's Run is the runner part, but the others deal with the afterlife. And I remember that I'm doing an interview, a textual interview with you for New Jersey Stage magazine, that you talked about Hugo Simberg's 1896 painting, In the Garden of Death, which I'll show our audience what it looks like in a second. Maybe I should do that now so they can see what I'm talking about, because you mentioned it, and I think it's very telling. Um, Share screen. We'll do this. And this is it's a very small painting. It's only 6 by 6 inches. But these are the three Grim Reapers that are tending a garden. So now that you've seen it, and you can see the Wikipedia listing, stop share so that, Immanuel, you can tell us that you thought this was very important uh, point to make vis-a-vis your film, because the notion of after we die, consciousness is not necessarily, doesn't dissipate. I mean, it's not, death is not an end. And I mean, we've heard lots of philosophers and Maharishis talk about how you know, or even in something like Star Wars, where after you die, your essence still is in the universe. Tell us about how this painting was important in the development of your movie.
Yeah, definitely. I really love that painting, especially as you mentioned, it's very small, and I kind of love the idea of a very big topic. It's a heavy topic. It's something that torments us as mortals, because that's one of the central aspects of our existence. It's our knowledge of our end.
Yeah,
And there's someone painting a little painting about three personifications, which is also absurd. I mean, we take this concept of our death
yeah,
and we personify it in a way that resembles us. There's this looking at ourselves, because Grim Reapers are skeletons of human beings.
right.
And then he takes them, the painter takes them, and he doesn't show them in a dark sky or a mountain or a setting that would evoke like feelings of grandeur or something. But on the contrary, he lets them do what everybody we know also does. They tend to plants,
Yeah,
and it has this sweet multi-layered emotional drive. It's sad. It's big, and it's very small, and it's very sweet. It's ironic, and there are three Grim Reapers. It's not the one Grim Reaper. There are multiples, and sometimes they have time off their job and stuff like that. So yeah, but when you're doing a film like that, you're searching for material, you're reading all the time, and then you find these little gems that speak to you on different levels, and it has to have, on the one hand, of course, an intellectual quality to it, like that
yeah.
you're saying, ah, there's a concept and whatever, but also it has this, you have to have this emotional connection to the situation they're in. And I love the idea, because we also made a movie about three workers, and they all three personify death in a way. And also for them, it's an everyday task, and so there were several connections that I really liked. Also, the perspective of the painting. It's not very deep. It's not taking you in there. It has these layers that you can look at. And well, I love a certain geometry in the aesthetics of that we chose for Paradise as well. So yeah, there were a lot of connections, and then at some point I just thought, let's write a short statement about that and see if principles arise that we will follow through with as
No,
well.
and I think it's wonderful to I mean, I'd seen that painting before, but in the context of your film, it makes perfect sense because of the nature of the cyclical nature of life, where they're tending to the garden and having things grow. But of course, the objects in the garden, they die too. So the cyclical nature of life and is a never-ending thing. And I think that's what's nice about. But you know, reading about, and I don't want to spend too much more time on the painting, but reading about how the painting actually was used as a mural in a cathedral, and yet some clergy didn't like the painting. You know, this whole idea of what it represents, I think ties in very nicely to your film too, because the delivery people end up following a woman that they are supposed to terminate but decide not to. And they start to follow her to see what will happen to her. But inevitably, it looks like death is going to take care of her too on its own without their help. So the inevitability of death is not something that you can avoid, correct? I mean, this is something that you wanted to point out in your film. But I love the soundtrack. I wanted to ask you, is that a banjo that we're hearing, as
Yes,
well
it
as
is.
a vibraphone, or, you know, those are the two main instruments, as
Yeah,
well as percussive instruments. And I think though choosing those instruments also lend levity to the
yeah,
scenes that we see, right? It's not to be taken too seriously,
yeah,
even though you're dealing with very heavy existential
yeah.
um, stuff. I mean, so can you tell us how that came about? How did you decided to use that as your musical base to your film?
Yeah, definitely. Well, as you mentioned, there a certain ambivalence was very important to us from the beginning. Like that we have a dark topic, but we have a very humorous way of looking at ourselves dealing with that topic. Because, as you said, yes, obviously there's no point in trying to sell a fiction where we can escape death.
Yeah.
I don't. I think it's counterproductive for us to experience that. On the contrary, we should look at and explore how we deal with an inevitability. And there are three people who are doing that. They're using what their society has deemed the way to deal with death. They are living that, and then in a way of very classical storytelling, actually, that is disrupted, and they change sides. They are walking on both paths, and they have with us together the ability to look at stuff that happens along the way. And well, the humor first accompanied us visually, in terms of colorful accents in the image, people leaving and entering the frame in certain ways,
Yeah.
and then also in the music. The music was really important. I'm so glad to have found the composer Berta. She's a great composer, who worked with us during the edit. In the last weeks of the edit, we also already had the first pieces from her in the timeline, so we were able to adjust the pace of the film to the music, and vice versa. And yeah, we were searching for this kind of abstract
Mm.
tone. That's why we used almost solely percussive instruments. For
Yeah.
example, John Cage was an inspiration, and we listened to a lot of stuff. And then we thought, what could be ironic notes? Because music is what so many times in movies, but also in general, is so fast at generating emotions. I mean, we put on a track, and we are immediately there. It's kind of, wow, yeah. It's even more manipulating than movies. And so you yeah, I think as a filmmaker you have to be very careful at what to select, because there's a dialogue going there all the time as well, of course.
Yeah.
And so we wanted something that was not that was emotional but not overwhelming, and that was a comment, and yeah, dealing with the ambivalence and feeling that we try to generate in performance and image. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the sound and the rest of your team is just that they're all amazing. I thought, I mentioned the DP, Philip
Philip. Yeah.
Zili, just does a masterful job with you. I mean, and I see the symmetry in some of the shots. I mean, there is an order, but there's also at times where the order is, things become a little skewed. And I think that was obviously very consciously done. But I wanted to focus on the three lead actors, which are Franziska Machens, who plays Morris, Holger, my pronunciation, if I
I
screw,
can pronounce it for you if you
please,
want to.
please,
It's
Holger,
Franziska Machens.
okay.
Franziska Machens as Morris, Holger Demgen
Mm.
as Grund, and Johannes Kühn as Kraumann.
Yeah, they're perfect. I think the thing is, I noticed that they just live in the van, right? There's no place to go. There's no showers or anything like that. The world is very hermetic for them, and even the people that they're pursuing are also in these kind of empty worlds. Was it a practical? Is the world so devoid of activity? I mean, you mentioned that the location is between where West Germany and East Germany met, correct? And so that area is not very populated. So you wanted spaces that didn't have lots of, just as a practical, to make it easier to film, or?
Well, I think in film there's often this interaction between what is practical and what is conceptually in your mind. It interacts, and at the end you don't know which started the process in a way. And I think that's very important. Actually, it's not like a defect of having to do something in real life.
Yeah.
It's more that by that the world also changes your vision, and that makes it, in my opinion, worthwhile. Like the process gives this interaction. And in an earlier draft of the screenplay, I had little places where they stop, go in, sleep, shower, and then get in their van again and drive off. And through the time of rewriting the screenplay, there were less and less of those, real buildings in the movie. Those were the last ones surviving after 3 drafts, I think. And, and then a good friend of mine, a writer-director as well, who co-wrote the last draft with me, Matthias Sali, he said, like, Immanuel, take them out. They are a remnant of our world. They are not this world that you created, and we took them out and said, let's let them sleep in the van, let them be one with the van. And it just clicked. It made it so much more one. It made it so much more austere, as you said, and it fitted in with the landscape. It wasn't that because would we have built little cottages or something, you would see a certain stylization or will to generate something as an author, because that's often what happens. I think often authors and directors think that they want to build something, generate something, because that then is exactly what their vision is like. And I don't think it works. Oftentimes, most of the time, it's something applied to something else, and the elements don't connect. And that's why, as you mentioned, temporality. Is it science fiction, or because fantasy is not a good word for it, science fiction is not a good word for it, but in a way, it's our world with a few screws turned differently, like something works differently. And that was the goal there, like to give it a authentic atmosphere of a world very close to us, but at the same time very far away.
I mean, we talked about the 3 Grim Reapers tending the garden, and the more I thought about your film, it's very green. Yeah, there's a couple of sequences that are in the arid areas where the wind farms are at the beginning of your film, but it's very green, and nature is very important in your film. And I felt as if, you didn't need to have sets or anything like that. It would take away from the power of your movie. So I really appreciated the locations that you selected and how it underscored many of the themes of your film. Just
that was a lot of work. Thank you. But
I mean, you had to find those locations, and they fit perfectly well. I wanted to show. I'm going to share screen once more. Let me do this first, and then come back to share screen so I can show people how they can purchase tickets. Normally, folks would click on njfilmfest.com. Right, the website is on this card behind me. This is normally where you would go to get all the information. It's the location would then click on the summer schedule, and normally everything would be right here. And because we are doing our film festival virtually, we are using Eventive, who is a major streaming provider for major motion pictures in this country. A24, Magnolia, a lot of companies use them. So when COVID broke last year, I had to find a place that would, and everybody said Eventive was the best. So we've been partnering with them for the last year and a half, there and abouts. And so you would normally have everything here, but now you need to click on this watcheventive.org page, which will send you to this site, which will include everything that we're showing. Films, each program is $12. If you want a full access pass, so you can see 11 of our programs, it's $75. It's a great deal. It's like half price. And that way you can see everything. And then if you wanted to get more information about Paradise, you would click on this area and you would hit pre-order, and you could, get tickets that way. And the wonderful thing about doing this video on demand is that you can watch the movie starting at 12 o'clock midnight on June the 12th. I believe that's correct. Yes, June the 12th. And if you're in Germany, you would have, I think the time difference is 6 hours, is that correct? And so that you could actually start watching on Friday, June 11th at 6 p.m. Because of the time difference. I think that's how it works. And, or maybe it's the other way around. I think it would begin a little bit later into Saturday, but you have 24 hours to watch the movie. And even if you started late in the evening on the East Coast in the US at 11:45, you still have 24 hours to watch it, so you can watch it into Sunday. I hope that makes sense. Also, if you wanted to get more information about the site, you would go to our welcome page, which has the film guide, which lists all the various films individually. You can go to the schedule page, which lists everything textually with big pictures. And so that's how you can get information about our festival. And I'll stop sharing and say thank you so much to Immanuel Esser for spending the time to do this Q&A. You absolutely should see Paradise. Immanuel is an up-and-coming director. Do you have another project lined up after this one?
Yes, I have, but it's not ready to be talked about yet.
No problem. Make sure you send it to us whenever it is done. We
I
love your
definitely
work,
will.
and we think your film is absolutely. It's the thinking. Our festival is a thinking man's festival as well as a humanist festival. So your film ticks both of those boxes. We don't like to show the standard, you know, roller coaster ride movies. We want people to think about their own lives, and your film is a perfect vehicle for that. And I hope you will join us to watch Paradise on June 12th. And thanks again so much, Immanuel, for joining us for this Q&A.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was great talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So